What's up, guys? Welcome back to the YouTube channel and welcome back to my kitchen. As always, if we're in the kitchen, there's a pretty good chance that we're going to be talking about nutrition. And today we are going to specifically be talking about rice. Every bodybuilder's favorite food, right? White rice. How many times have we eaten rice with one of our meals? And it's just not even something that we think about anymore. And so that is kind of the main point of today's video is as bodybuilders, we eat a ton of white rice. And after a while, if you guys are like me, you kind of just get sick and tired of eating the same thing every time. So what I want to go through today is I want to go over some alternatives to rice that you can implement in your diet that will still give you all of the things that you love about rice, but will make the monotony of eating just plain old white rice a little bit less hellish. So before we get into the alternatives, I want to just take a second to talk about rice as a whole and why I believe that rice is probably the most important or most popular bodybuilding food. And this is kind of a question that I will get from family members or people who aren't typically involved in the fitness industry. Why do bodybuilders eat so much rice? Why is rice the food that you eat in all of your meals? And in my opinion, I think this comes down to a couple key points. The first is that rice is unbelievably cheap. If you're buying rice at your local Walmart, you can get a 20-pound bag of rice for 10 bucks. If you're buying expensive premium rice like Calrose rice, that 20-pound bag may cost you 15 bucks or 20 bucks at the absolute most, which is still very cheap when you consider how long a 20-pound bag of rice will last. I eat a shitload of rice, and it takes me 2 months or so to go through a 20-pound bag of rice. So if you're not eating as much white rice as I am, which is, probably the average person is not eating as much rice as I am, a 20-pound bag of rice will last you forever. And like I said, a 20-pound bag of rice you can get for 10, 15 bucks. I mean, they're basically giving that shit away. So it's a very, very cost-effective carbohydrate. Number two is that it digests incredibly well. I personally don't know a single person who cannot digest white rice with any sort of issues, honestly. None. Not a single client that I've ever had, not a single friend or colleague or peer that I've met in the gym has ever had issues with digesting rice. Rice is one of the main ingredients that are in a lot of baby foods, at least here in the United States. I can't speak for other countries, but a lot of the baby foods that we have here in the United States are rice-based because rice is such a gentle food on the digestive system, and obviously babies and infants don't have a fully developed digestive system yet, and so the foods that they eat need to be chosen very carefully. And then another important reason is that I think that rice is incredibly versatile. You can really put any sort of seasoning or condiment or dish with rice and it will match. Rice is kind of a texture food. I personally don't think that rice really has much of a taste. Rice really is more of a texture food, in my opinion. And that texture just seems to go very good with a lot of different things. So there's a lot of different options that you can use for rice to make your meals more versatile. And I think that those things that I mentioned, the cost effectiveness of it, how it digests incredibly well with almost everybody. I want to say everybody, but I'm sure there's somebody out there that can't digest rice. I just have never found anybody that can't digest it. And its versatility make it a very, very positive, good carbohydrate to be using from a bodybuilding standpoint. And then another thing that just kind of crept into my mind is that it's considerably easier to eat rice in large quantities than other carbohydrate sources. So if you're somebody who's in a bulking phase and you need a lot of calories and a lot of carbohydrates in order to gain weight, 100 grams of carbohydrates from rice compared to 100 grams of carbohydrates from oats or potato is considerably easier to eat that amount of food from rice than it is to eat it from rice or potato or quinoa or any other carbohydrate that you can really think of. It seems that rice is the easiest to eat in large quantities, which makes it a very, very good bulking food. All right, so let's get into our white rice alternatives. So first, I'm actually starting with rice, and just cut me some slack here. Obviously, I know that rice is not a rice alternative, but I did want to talk about the actual rice that you're using first before I get into some of these alternatives. So one of the things that we have available to us in a lot of these grocery stores is different forms of rice. What you have, or what you see in front of me in this big container, this is Calrose rice. This is sushi rice or something along those lines. I'll throw pictures of all of these products up here so that you guys know what I'm talking about. Typically, I'll buy a 20-pound bag of Calrose rice and I will fill this big jug with it. Calrose rice is my preferred form of rice, but as I mentioned, there are plenty of other forms of rice that we can use. We can use brown rice. We can use jasmine rice, which is incredibly popular in bodybuilding. I have basmati rice here that we keep in our house, and you can even buy just regular plain white rice in short grain, medium grain, or long grain. Really, the difference between all of these types of rices, as I mentioned prior to this, is their texture. And I really feel like that is an important thing to mention. For these specifically, the basmati rice is more of a drier texture. The individual grains of rice, they cook a little bit smaller. And so I feel that the texture of this is almost like a more dry texture when I eat it, versus the Calrose rice is a very sticky rice when I make it. It clumps together very well, and it's very easy to eat in large quantities just because of how it gels and how it sticks. Brown rice has a very different texture than both of these forms of rice. Jasmine rice has a different texture than both of these forms of rice. All of the different forms of rice are all rice at the end of the day, but the main differences that I notice between all of them is texture. And as I said earlier, rice is mostly, in my opinion, a texture food. And so if you're only eating jasmine rice and you're getting sick and tired of eating jasmine rice, why don't you try switching to Calrose rice, or why don't you try basmati? Why don't you try different forms of rice so that you can get different textures and everything that go along with that? Going along with that in different textures, I would experiment with different rice to water ratios. So for example, when someone cooks rice, they may cook, for every 1 cup of rice they use, they may use 1 cup of water. But someone else may use 2 cups of water for every 1 cup of rice that they use. Depending on how much water you use, the more rice the more water gets soaked up by the rice, and that will alter the texture alone. If I were to take 1 cup of this basmati rice and cook it with a cup of water, and then take another cup of this basmati rice and cook it with 2 cups of water, they're both 1 cup of dry basmati rice, but they both have very different textures because of the amount of water that I added. So I would also experiment playing with those things, water to rice ratios. And then finally, I've talked about this on my channel tons of times, but if you guys don't have a rice cooker, I want you to stop watching this video right now and go to the store and buy one. If you are a bodybuilder and you don't have a rice cooker in your home, I think that you're making a very fatal mistake. Not only is the texture of cooking rice in a rice cooker considerably better than cooking it on the stovetop or cooking it in the microwave, and God forbid, if you guys are buying those microwavable rice cups, I highly suggest that you stop buying those because not only are they unnecessarily expensive, they're also going to have some oils and some preservatives and stuff that are filled in there. May not be a big deal on the short-term scale, but if you're eating 3 to 5 of those microwavable cups of rice per day, which is not uncommon for somebody who's in a bulk, the total cumulative amount of oils and preservatives and stuff that you're going to be getting through that is something that could be avoided if you were just buying your own rice and cooking it yourself. The other advantage of the rice cooker is that you can literally leave the rice in it and almost forget about it, and it cooks it on its own, and then it'll keep it warm forever. I don't do this anymore, but I used to start my rice cooker and I would let it run for days straight without uncooking it, and the rice would just stay warm and warm and warm in there the whole time. I don't do that anymore. I transfer it to my meals and then I refrigerate it. But if I needed to, I could definitely get away with doing that with a rice cooker. So between the form of rice that you're using, white rice, brown rice, jasmine rice, basmati rice, calrose rice, sushi rice if you can find it, the amount of water to rice that you're using, and then using different methods or utensils, rice cooker, stovetop, what else? Pressure cooker to cook your rice. You can take this rice and you can cook it in a bunch of different ways with a bunch of different textures. So that's a good place to start off with, is maybe start with playing around with the texture of the rice that you are currently eating and using different modalities to make that happen. Next up is cream of rice, an unbelievably popular carb source that we see in a lot of bodybuilders' full day of eating videos is cream of rice. I do have a lot of clients that mention to me that cream of rice is very difficult for them to find in their grocery store. Have no fear, if that's you, you can make your own cream of rice. All that cream of rice is pulverized white rice. So if you have a blender or you have a coffee grinder or you have a food processor, you can take plain white rice, the white rice that we just went over there, and you can put that in the blender, food processor, coffee grinder, and you can grind it into a very fine dust, and that is quite literally all that cream of rice is. I do like to buy it in the box just because it's convenient, and I find that it's a little bit more ground down than when I grind it myself. I do find that there are some grains of rice that don't get fully ground, and so I do like the texture of the store-bought cream of rice a little bit better than homemade cream of rice. But if you have a hard time finding this, you can make it yourself, and there really is no advantage to buying the boxed version other than convenience. This is an absolute staple carbohydrate source for me, again, because it is just ground up white rice. Everything that I can make with white rice, I can make with cream of rice. And one of the things that's nice about cream of rice is, again, the texture. It's almost like an oatmeal type of consistency and texture. With white rice, I have to put it in my mouth and chew it, obviously. I don't really have to chew cream of rice. It's basically like a pudding or like a mush type of texture. Keep in mind that cream of rice is a very common food that is given to babies in a diet. Again, babies don't have fully developed digestive systems. And because of that, ground up rice is going to be the easiest way to get food in. And then obviously infants don't have teeth, and so they can't chew. And so this is something that you can like quite literally put in your mouth and just swallow it. And so cream of rice is another very, very good alternative to white rice. I almost have a hard time calling it an alternative because it is white rice. It's just white rice that has been ground up even more. This is a great carbohydrate for the off season or bulking as an oatmeal replacement. Typically, a lot of people will like to use oats and oatmeal when they're dieting, and then they kind of carry that into their off season, and then they try to eat 100 grams of carbs or more from oatmeal, and it can cause some digestive problems for them. I am that person. I'm dieting right now, and I'm eating oatmeal for breakfast probably 4 out of 7 mornings a week. The other days I'm eating cream of rice. But when I'm in an off season or when I'm in a bulking phase, I will eat cream of rice every morning, period. I won't even touch oats in the off season, because when my stomach is taking the overall beating that it's taking when I'm eating 4,000, 5,000 calories a day, for whatever reason, I don't digest oats as well when I'm bulking. And when I do eat the oats when I'm bulking, they just kind of sit in my stomach forever. So cream of rice is a very, very good 1-to-1 replacement for oatmeal. 75 grams of oatmeal and 75 grams of cream of rice are the exact same calories. There is a little bit more fat and a little bit less carbs in the oatmeal, but from a total calorie standpoint, they're exactly 1-to-1. So if you're eating 100 grams of oats, you can replace it with 100 grams of cream of rice, and you're your energy balance will stay the exact same. Another unbelievably versatile carbohydrate product. I can make cream of rice and I can put meat in there, chicken, beef, pork, and I can add salt and hot sauce. I can make cream of rice and I can put fruit and whey protein in it. I can make cream of rice and I can put sugar or dark baking cocoa with some Splenda in there and kind of make like a chocolatey type of cream of rice. It's unbelievably versatile. One of my favorite carbohydrate products by far, and an awesome alternative to traditional white rice. Next up, we're gonna go over rice cakes. I don't actually have any rice cakes in my home right now, but I do think that rice cakes are a really good alternative to white rice, primarily for those who are cutting. I don't find that rice cakes translate very well in a bulking phase for a couple of reasons. One of the advantages of the rice cakes is that you can eat lots of them. They're a very like low calorie, high volume food, which is great when you're dieting. But I also find that that can be a problem when you're bulking. Like if I have to eat 100 grams of carbs in a meal when I'm bulking, I don't want to eat 15 rice cakes. I would rather just have 2 cups of rice. I'd be able to get that down a lot quicker and with a lot less issues. And then also, most rice cakes that you find on the market are made with brown rice. And I had kind of mentioned brown rice earlier when I had talked about the different forms of rice. Obviously, everyone is very different, and some people can digest brown rice with no issues, but brown rice is a food that I personally cannot digest without getting a lot of stomach issues. So I do have kind of like a limit on my rice cakes. I may only eat like 4 or 5 of them at a time max, because if I find that I get, say, 50, 60, 70, 80 grams of carbs in from brown rice, my stomach is not going to be very happy about that. But there are some rice cakes and rice cake products. I don't know if I can really call them rice cakes because they're almost like rolls, like tubes, that are made with white rice. I found them in the grocery store the other day. I'll try and find some pictures and throw them up. But there are some rice cakes and rice products that you can buy that are made with white rice instead of brown rice. And if you can find those, I think that those are excellent alternatives and replacements for white rice, primarily in a cutting phase. I don't really recommend too many rice cakes in a bulking phase personally, but obviously if you can fit those in your macros and you want to eat something that's very, very high volume and low calorie, then go for it. It's just not something that I would do if I were bulking. Next rice alternative is going to be rice noodles, and I actually have 2 different kinds here. Hopefully you can see this one pretty good. Rice noodles are exactly what they sound like. If you guys have ever had Thai food, I believe Vietnamese food may also use rice noodles. All that rice noodles are is rice and water. I'll obviously overlay a picture so that you can see that, but it's just rice in pasta form. You can make spaghetti with this. You can make, anything that you can make with noodles or that you can make with pasta, you can make with this rice pasta. And I do find that it tastes just as good as traditional wheat pasta, and it happens to digest considerably quicker and considerably better. They do make brown rice pasta, again, for the same reasons that I mentioned on the rice cake segment. I don't really like to use brown rice pasta. I like to use white rice pasta. This particular brand, this Thai Kitchen, you can find this in Walmart in the ethnic food aisle. I believe it's the Asian food aisle. You can find these. You can find these at most grocery stores too as well, but most people will have a Walmart by them, and that is where I get these. And then I actually found these in a different grocery store the other day. These are the same exact thing as the rice noodles that I'm showing here, but they are in a different texture. So I'll try and overlay a picture so that you can see the difference. These noodles are a little bit thicker and they're a little bit wider, and these noodles here are very, very thin. If you can think of like ramen consistency, how the noodles are very, very skinny, that is really the difference between these two. So these 2 products are the exact same thing. Really the only difference is going to be, do I want a thicker noodle and a wider noodle? Think about like an egg noodle in like chicken noodle soup or something. Or do I want a very thin and stringy type of noodle, like an angel hair pasta, or like ramen? Ramen is a pretty good comparison. So rice pasta is another really good one. Another one that's super easy to eat in large quantities. I can make 150 to 200 grams of carbs from rice pasta, put some beef in there, put some pasta sauce on it, put some Parmesan cheese on it, and I can house that shit in 20 minutes easily. No real issues or concerns there. So rice pasta is a really good one. Definitely recommend that one as well. Finally, the last rice alternative is going to be rice cereals. What I have in front of me is Cocoa Dino Bites, which is the off-brand version of Cocoa Pebbles. This one obviously has some cocoa powder and some sugars and stuff that are added, and so this would be something that I would probably reserve for a bulking phase when calories get really high. But at the same token, you can buy regular Rice Krispies cereal or regular Rice Chex cereal, and you can implement that in your diet with no problem. Regular Rice Krispies cereal is quite literally white rice with a little bit of salt and 1 gram of sugar. It's puffed white rice. What it is they take the raw rice that I showed in the bag, and they basically put it in a giant toaster and they puff it. And then they add a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar, and that's quite literally it. So I do think that rice cereal, Rice Krispies, Fruity Pebbles, Cocoa Pebbles, Rice Chex are all really good carb sources that you can use. Again, primarily in an off season, just because of some of the added preservatives and stuff that are in there. But also when food intake gets high, there are times in a peak bulk where my post-workout meal can be 300 grams of carbs. And trying to eat 300 grams of carbs from white rice or potato or oats is fucking misery. But trying to eat 300 grams of carbs from cereal is the easiest thing ever. I mean, you can just make a big bowl of cereal and you can house that shit pretty quickly. So rice-based cereal is another really good alternative. I try to limit this to my larger meals, specifically post-workout. If I were having a meal that was later in the day that was 100 grams of carbs, I wouldn't get those carbs from, Cocoa Pebbles. I would get that from white rice or a rice pasta or something like that. But if we're talking about a big post-workout meal or a refeed day where I'm trying to increase my carbohydrate intake and keep digestive distress minimal, I think that rice cereals are excellent to go with. I would stick with the ones that I mentioned, so all of the Rice Krispie products, Rice Krispies, Frosted Krispies, Cocoa Pebbles, Fruity Pebbles, any of the limited edition flavors, and then Rice Chex are a really good one to go with. There are a couple of cereals that have rice in them, but they're not 100% rice. So Crispix is one, Special K is one. Those cereals do have rice in them, but it's usually a mix of rice with wheat or corn, whereas the Fruity Pebbles and the Rice Krispies line and the Rice Chex are pure rice, 100%. There's no flour, there's no corn, there's no oats that are mixed in it. It's all pure white rice, and so I do like to stick with those ones, again, just for digestive purposes. If you can digest flour and corn, fine, then, have at it, but I have issues with corn in even moderate amounts. Corn-based cereals will really just upset my stomach, and if I have too much of wheat, that will upset my stomach as well. I can probably have like 50 to 75 grams of carbs from wheat with no problem, but if it starts to get above that, then I start to notice some digestive issues with that. So I prefer to stick with the cereals that are 100% rice-based, that don't have anything else added into them. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching and taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Hopefully you learned something during this video, and maybe you learned of a new food or two that you can implement in your diet just to break up the monotony of eating the same old white jasmine rice every day. Because like I said, I love bodybuilding and I love eating this way, but it does get old after a while. I'm a human being at the end of the day. So having some of these foods on hand and kind of in the back pocket so that we can use them whenever we want them is always going to be a good idea in my head, especially if you're in a bulking phase, because when you're dieting, food can be a little bit more exciting, so to say, but when you're bulking, especially at the tail end of a bulk, the thought of eating the same foods over and over and over again can kind of get to be a little bit daunting. So I do like to have some variety in there. If you guys have any questions or anything, as always, or if you guys have suggestions for more food-related videos, I am all ears, guys. I would love to make content that you guys want to see, so please leave me suggestions, whether it's in the comment section, send me a DM, or comment on one of my social media posts. I am always open to hearing new ideas for content creation, and I want to keep what you guys want to see in mind. So just let me know what you guys are interested in seeing. Let me know if you have any questions on this video, and I can give you guys a little bit more feedback or anything, as always. And again, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I'm going to go train legs. If you guys are training today, you guys better be killing it. Thanks for watching again, and take care of yourselves, guys. Have a good one.